3, 2, and 1. Okay, so my first guest here today, before I say your name, I want to talk about how we actually met. We were on our way to, this is like 2 years ago, we're heading to Portland, and our mutual friend, Adam, asked me to come along for a stag, and I haven't met anybody. You guys are all new to me. There's like, I think 4 of us that went. And whatever, we go down there, and after we get there at night, in the morning, we're kind of seeing each other kind of face to face. And there you are sitting outside, and in this kind of really cool house, actually, like a heritage house. Your shirt off with your jean shorts on. Just kind of chilling. And I started talking to you, and what was really cool was the more I talked to you and I asked you kind of what you do, which is such a limiting question, you started talking about men and their feelings and so on, and you made it really comfortable for me to open up to you kind of what I had kind of gone through at that time. And we continued talking, and everything that you spoke about resonated with me, and I still see you in our neighborhood, and your approach is really unique. And it could be that, sadly, there isn't enough men that talk about their feelings and so on. And some of the things are so honest. And I think I was just talking to you offline before we kind of came on, and I'm going to paraphrase this. Actually, I don't have to paraphrase. It was something about when I look at fat people. What was it?
Yeah, so basically what I had said was, I'm better than you because I'm not fat.
Perfect. What a great opening. So my guest today is Ryan Thomas. And Ryan, I really appreciate you coming on. And I want to get into this because this is something that men don't talk about. And some of the questions that we've talked about, I'm excited to kind of go into them, go a little bit deeper and go understanding. So first of all, tell me a little bit about your background and how you came to the door of everything that you talk about now.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, I'll keep that real quick because we can go real deep with the story or real quick. So, the quick and dirty. I was in the Army for 11 years. During my time in the military, I struggled with sexual dysfunction. Didn't have any real support for how to work my way through that, and also some depression. Managed to scour the internet and get some solutions for my sexual dysfunction. Resolved my sexual dysfunction. And then in 2014, I'd been out of the Army for a little bit, and I wanted to help men in the ways that I had not been helped before. So then I started a sex coaching business and a sex podcast called The Intimate Lifestyle, which I'm not doing anymore. And yeah, and that's basically the quick and dirty of it. And that sort of started me down this path of coaching. Now I focus a bit more on, it's a bit of a different style of coaching. So I was doing sex coaching before and running sex workshops. And during that time, I had been using sex to validate my existence as a man, and which I think a lot of guys do. Yeah. Once I realized that, if I'm having a really great sex, then I feel great as a guy. That was, once I could identify how to feel solid as a man without needing the sex, then I realized, oh, that's what I was looking for. I was actually just looking for the confidence within myself. And then that sort of shifted. Now I realized, okay, well, I don't actually need to worry about sex. I actually want to target like the core beliefs and finding like internal power. And so that's sort of the transition from the military to sex coaching to now personal power coaching.
What's that journey? Like, is there a moment of surrender? Is there a moment that happens? Is it a day? Is it a week? Is it a weekend that you've had sex again for whatever the 100th time, and there's that feeling, and finally you've decided, like, I got to do something about this? Or is it a gradual thing? I say that because I only can refer to my instance where I had a moment of surrender, like, okay, I've got to do something with my life. I have to change something. And most people have that moment. Was it a moment for you, or was it like, I'm in the same situation over and over again, I need to change it?
Do you mean like when I was struggling with sexual dysfunction?
Yeah.
Yeah. There were a lot of little moments that led up to the final moment, which was the moment. So I had been struggling with involuntary ejaculation. So I don't want to say premature ejaculation because sometimes it was premature, sometimes it was just involuntary, like a minute or 2 minutes. Sometimes I would go 5 minutes, but then it would still happen without me having any kind of control over it, and that was really frustrating at the time. And then I had a partner, and I wanted to make a change, and I had said to her, I was like, hey, I want to try some different things in the bedroom to see if I can get myself back to, a place that, where I feel more confident. And she said to me, well, if I'm not enjoying having sex with you, then I'm not going to want to have sex with you anymore. So whatever it is that you're going through, you have to figure it out on your own. Yeah. But now here's the thing. If you removed the first bit of the conversation that I just said, like for a few minutes, and I just told you that little section of what I told my girlfriend at the time and what she said to me, people would say, what are you talking about? There's no context, right? I was not clear in my communication to her. So years later, even though in that moment I was eviscerated as a man, just brutal situation to go through. Because what I heard her say was, I don't enjoy having sex with you. You suck as a guy, and I'm just going to go fuck some other guy. Right? That's what I had heard, right? But years later, I had a conversation with her, and she's like, I told her, well, you remember that time that I told you that I was struggling with premature ejaculation and I wanted to try something different? She's like, oh, that's what you were saying? I thought you wanted to try some kinky shit in the bedroom. And I was like, if you wanted to do whips and chains and stuff and I wasn't having fun, then I didn't want to be part of that. So I was just telling you, I was like, hey, if you want to do some weird stuff in the bedroom, sure, maybe I'll try it. But if I don't like it, I'm not doing it. And so she actually had no idea that I was coming to her with that problem. Because for her, it was like, oh, whatever.
And you thought you had said what you had said, and she didn't hear what you had said.
Exactly, because I was not clear in my communication because I was so scared to actually own the issue. Yeah, there was a lot of vulnerability in actually saying, hey, I don't think I'm lasting very long in the bedroom. I don't think I'm performing all that well, and I'm scared that you're not having a good time. I want to try a few different things so I can last longer. Can you help me? Are you open? What are your thoughts, and are you willing to be there with me?
And so that starts your journey going through the process of healing that part and finding out other ways to not do that. And through that, you find out that you can teach other men.
Yeah. So
give me a second. Keep moving the mic a little bit back from you. You have a very powerful voice.
Oh,
You're like
okay.
Pavarotti. There you go. Keep going now.
Right over here?
Yeah, go. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, is that better? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm also getting used to listening to my own voice as I'm talking right now.
You like that?
Yeah, it's a little different. Having my own podcast for 4 years and not having as good of a setup as this. So this is new. So I tried so many different things. I hadn't used any numbing cream, but I'd used self-hypnosis. I'd used different emotions. Like I tried jerking off beforehand. I had tried being really drunk. I tried distracting myself and looking at birds out the window, and that could work for a little bit. But eventually it's like, hey, I got to be here in this moment with my girlfriend. I'd use anger. I'd get really, really angry, and that could actually hold it off for a little bit. But the anger would really distance myself from my partner. And then there wasn't really as much pleasure in it. I mean, the angry sex can be fun, but I didn't want to always be there. I wanted to be able to just have sex and not have to think about it, and not have to worry about it, and I could just be in the moment with her. So eventually I found the book, The Multi-Orgasmic Man. This was in 2010. And I started doing some practices, and I got to a point where I could start experiencing non-ejaculatory orgasms. And I was like, wow, this is great. Okay, cool. And then my sex life with that girl improved, even though she was the one who had hurt me in the first place. Not intentionally. Yeah, exactly. Not intentionally. Because of my own piss poor communication. And I really do think that that's a huge problem, is that we have really piss poor communication because we're scared of being vulnerable and owning our emotions and communicating what's actually going on, that it creates miscommunications and ends up causing problems, which is exactly what had happened between me and her. But anyways, so I got that issue resolved, and then I was posted to New City because I was still in the Army, slipped into a depression, and then I started dealing with erectile dysfunction. I couldn't get hard. or I would get partially hard, or I'd be with a girl and I would start to get hard, but then I would lose it. Or I just wouldn't get hard at all. Am I jumping too fast there?
No, this is great. Do you think the Army had anything to, or did
No.
you experience anything, or does it go back to childhood?
No, actually, when I was in my early 20s, when I was having sex, I didn't have any problems.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually, I would say that it was from, I think a big part of it had to do with the pickup artist world. That created a lot of anxiety around women. Yeah. And then that fed into the bedroom. And then my own insecurities with women would show up, and I wanted to be really good in the bedroom. And so then that was what created all this anxiety, was because I needed to prove that I was worthy of their love. I needed to prove that I was good enough. And then by making a woman orgasm or like being great in the bedroom, then I could show that I am a strong man and that I deserve her. And then naturally that creates this performance anxiety, because now I'm not actually having sex with her. I'm doing sex to her in order to get a result, which is the orgasm, which then makes me feel a certain way, which is now I feel confident, now I feel validated, now I feel like a man.
I thought of the word self-worth right away.
Yeah. So yeah, self-worth was, it's a big part of it. Yeah. So that I would say that when it comes to sexual dysfunction, the majority of the issue, the majority of it is self-worth. It's about seeking validation from the woman, from an external source. So if you can actually target and derive that self-worth from within yourself and resolve any traumas that have maybe occurred in the past, like maybe a partner was really critical of you, or she cheated on you, or something like that, that can create this internal belief system where you're trying to fuck in order to validate your existence and then get approval and then get a sense of power. But if you can derive that internally and resolve that internally, then your performance anxiety will start to fade away naturally.
I just want to say I really appreciate how open you are, how honest you are, and vulnerable you are to bring this up, because I think it helps a lot of men listening to this to, it sounds like going through quite the journey to understand you have an issue and to address that issue and to go through the steps to deal with that issue and see everything else around it, to come out the other end with enough knowledge to help other men. Where I'm going to make this assumption is a lot of men are stuck way back there where you were, and they're going to continue going on with that because they don't know how to address it. There's embarrassment with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of embarrassment, there's shame, there's guilt, and there's also a lot of anger and resentment towards women.
Where's that come from?
I need to have sex with you and make, if I don't perform well, you're going to talk shit about me to your girlfriends, and now I'm not going to get the love and the approval that I want and that I need, and then that makes me feel sad and hurt, but then I don't want to feel those feelings, so instead I get mad. So for a lot of men, it's easier for us to feel anger than it is for us to feel sadness. Because sadness and guilt, those are vulnerable feelings, and we don't want to feel those things. So instead, we go to anger, which is, it's higher up on the emotional, energetic chain. And I know that might sound a little woo-woo, but anger is an activating emotion. So it actually empowers you. It does create power. So if I'm feeling low and sort of sad and then I can activate that anger, and then it allows me to feel a bit more power.
I'm hearing the word feeling come up a lot, and you always have to feel the situation. So what if, this is probably common, what if, I was going to say, what if we don't want to feel, but what if we don't know how to feel? What if we can't?
Yeah.
I'm assuming we can feel, but we're ignoring it because it's not something, even like I said to you, I go back to the conversation I had with you when we were sitting at that house. I was, you talked so easily that day about what you're talking about now. And part of me, I went really quiet. I think you talked for about 20 minutes. I just listened and listened and listened. And I was like, I felt so comfortable talking to you. And even though we were there on a guy's trip, my whole interest the entire time was talking more about picking your brain about.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Because it was, I'd been in the situation of vulnerability of admitting my mistakes and what I had kind of gone through, and it kind of put me in a place. And I talked to a friend the other day, and her and I were talking. We got in a discussion, and we were able to resolve something, but it was recovery language, as she put it. I was talking to her because I had recovered from something, and she had as well. And the way her and I were communicating, we're two people that have gone through recovery and come out the other end. Mm-hmm. And when I was talking to you, I kind of felt, oh, this is kind of like a brother to me. He's actually gone through something. And I felt you made me feel comfortable to talk to you. And I was talking about my feelings. So, but I've gone through it, so I understand my feelings. But getting back to the question is it fair to say it's not what if we can't feel it? Is it what if we don't want to feel or we don't want to acknowledge it?
Yeah, I see that, and I like the segue, and I think that that's sort of an offshoot, because the way to start feeling. So I've definitely run into men, and they're like, yeah, I don't really feel that much, or they can feel one emotion, or like let's say they can feel anger, but they can't feel any other emotions. So there's a few ways, I guess I guess I just have one thought around, like, do you think that we may have opened up a loop around the resentment towards women? Do you want to close that and then go to that? Or do you just want to go this way? Or I just want to check in with you.
Go wherever way you want, brother.
Okay, cool. So for the resentment piece towards women, so I'm going to go back to that, and then I'll answer your question about how to feel, if you don't mind. So yeah, I had resented a lot of women because I was also feeling really lonely, and I needed their approval in order to feel good. So I put the responsibility on women for my validation as a man. So that's what created this anger and this resentment. And I hated the fact that I wanted to sleep with women and that I wanted women because I'm heterosexual. But yeah, I hated that fact. So then I got mad at them, and then I resented them. But then that also fed into me not being able to get laid, because I would come in to meet women with a chip on my shoulder.
Well, can you go back and say that line again, the resentment part? You were heterosexual, but you were upset at them.
I don't know exactly what I said. I said, so I'm heterosexual, so I want to have sex with women.
Yeah.
But I resented the fact that I needed them for the feeling of power and
validation,
and validation. Okay. Yeah. Because I was putting it on them. But then that validation seeking, which created some resentment and fear, a lot of fear. So, and I resented the fact that I was scared of them. I resented that fact too. So I was scared, I was resentful, and I was angry, which then fed into it. So whenever I would meet a woman, I was so caught up in my fear and my resentment and my anger that I would create this little chip on my shoulder. And then the good women would feel that from me and then say, I don't want anything to do with this guy. He's kind of angry. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's a little weird in that regard. So I ended up turning away the women who would actually treat me really well. And then I would attract the women who kind of liked that vibe of a guy with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, who are also dealing with their own anger and their own chips and their own fears. But then those women were the women that would validate my belief that women were mean, women would treat me poorly, I couldn't trust them, and that I was unworthy.
So the question was about feeling. So
yes,
that's how you feel. But sorry.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of close up that loop around the resentment piece around women. So tying that up real quick. Once I realized that I was the source and that I was carrying that anger and that resentment, and I was creating those results because I had that filter about women. And even though the filter is right, it's only a small filter and a small portion of the truth. The other parts of the truth is that there are women who are scared, and that there are women who are beautiful and amazing and nurturing and loving and amazing. So once I realized that, I was able to shift my perspective, which then created more opportunities to meet women who would actually be much more nurturing and supportive, and then who were a better fit for me, so then I didn't need their validation. And then so that's closing up that loop, and now it comes down to the loop of what was I feeling? Yeah. So how do we feel? I would say that the big thing that a lot of people do is they get drunk. You know, they self-medicate. They dive into their work. They become addicted to working out. They get addicted to their work. They get addicted to fucking. They get addicted to, and anything that takes their focus away from silence. So if you remove yourself from all distractions, no phone, no Instagram, like no social media, and you just sit down and do absolutely nothing, feelings will start to arise. And then whatever it is that starts to come up, you can't deny it. Things will start to come up. Even boredom is an emotion, and boredom is a doorway into other emotions. So that's one way to start feeling, is stop doing things. Sit at home and just sit there and be bored as fuck. And then emotions will start to come up. That's one way. Another way is to allow yourself to go into situations where there's a bit of intensity. So if sex brings up certain emotions, okay, well, that's great. So what emotion is coming up? So it's also about just shifting your focus towards, instead of being stimulated, instead shift your focus towards what's happening in your body. Can you feel your legs on the floor? Can you feel your legs on the chair, your feet on the floor? Can you feel the temperature of the room?
Sounds a lot about being present.
Yeah, it's very much about present. Being present. So there's body sensations, and then there's also emotions. So those are the two things that you can pay attention to, what it is that you're feeling. So are you feeling an emotion or like an internal feeling? Or what body sensations are you feeling? So you can start off with body sensations because that's a lot easier. And then you can shift into the internal of like, okay, what emotions are coming up right now? And it's just about shifting the focus. If you try to force yourself to feel guilt or force yourself to feel sadness or any of these other emotions, then you're going to say, well, I can't feel these things. Well, no, you can. You're just trying to force something right now that's inauthentic. So instead, find what's authentic. Find what is true. Find what is already alive in you. And if you think of women, what emotion, what feeling happens in your body? Is it joy? Is it excitement? Or is it a little bit of resentment? Is it pride? Feel into those things. And that's an access to more feeling. And then you can start from there.
So one sits, and I totally agree with what you're saying when it comes to sitting at home and kind of feeling it all. There was a time back when I couldn't sit at home. I got to go out. I have to be around these people, that I need to be drinking this and doing that. And over the last 4.5, 5 years, very happy at home, and the feelings are fine. So what happens when we are at home and the feelings start to come up? And those are the real feelings. Like first we're trying to, we're trying to soothe those feelings with the drugs and the alcohol and the fucking and all that type of stuff. And now we're going to stop that. We're sitting at home. It's been about a week, and now those feelings are starting to show up. Can you talk a little bit about what those feelings might be, and maybe transitioning over to how do we deal with them?
Yeah, for sure. While I answer that, my throat's actually getting a little raspy. Could you do me a favor and give me a glass of water?
See, man, listen,
so
I'll just starting. You know what?
Okay, great.
I'm going through the process of understanding how to do these podcasts.
Okay, great. So while you're doing that, so I can answer that. So, I would say, I think I'd like to answer that question with an example.
Please do. There you go.
Thank you. So there was.
This should be a lesson to anyone wanting to start a podcast. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
You just have to show up to want to actually do one. That's it.
That's right.
And make sure you get chairs that are lower level than the table so they don't keep hitting it. All right. Okay. Here we go.
So I was struggling with anxiety, and there was this one time, there's a lot of different directions, so I'll just pick this direction. I was struggling with anxiety, and I was at a birthday party at Kitts Beach in Vancouver here. And I was feeling like all these thoughts like, oh God, people don't want me here. I suck. I'm a loser. People don't like me. Like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. I'm not funny enough. People don't want to talk to me. And even though I was even in a conversation and I was telling myself, oh, she doesn't actually even want to talk to me. She's just being polite right now. But what was actually happening was anxiety was coming up. The thoughts were the symptom of the emotion. So the thoughts weren't actually driving, like the thoughts weren't real. What was coming up was the emotion was coming up, and the emotion was there, and then the thoughts would validate it. The thoughts would try to explain what was happening in the moment, which was the emotion. So luckily enough, I knew from previous practices that I knew what was just happening. I was like, okay, I'm just dealing with a lot of anxiety. So the party was done. It was like 6:00 in the afternoon. And then I go home and I just sat there. I sat down in front of a little Buddha that I got. And I just sat there and I just felt the anxiety. And it was absolutely brutal. I was literally just sitting there and I would like fall over with the pain. It was like, oh my God, it would like seize in my gut, man. It was brutal. I would just like literally seize and like, oh my God. And I would fall over and I'm like, oh God, oh Jesus, oh God, okay.
This is the pain of the anxiety.
This is the pain of the anxiety because I was just sitting with it and letting it be there as strong as possible. When a thought would come up of like, they don't like me, they're like, they think I'm a loser. It's like, oh, that's just the thought. That's just the thought. I'm just going to bring the awareness to the feeling. Oh God. Okay. What am I feeling? Because if I get too caught up with the thought, then that can take me down a train. It can take me down like a thought train that's going nowhere good. And it validates the emotion. So instead I wanted to like, okay, that's just a thought. What's actually happening is what's going on in my body right now, which is the tightness, the seizing, and the pain of the anxiety. So that's what's happening. And then I hear another thought. It's like, okay, all right. And then bring it back to the feeling. It's like, oh my God, oh fuck, it really sucks. This is really hard. And that went on for about 45 minutes where I was just like feeling the anxiety, and it would kind of come in waves as well. It's like, oh, okay, I think I'm good. And then 2 minutes later, boom, it hits me again. Boom, wave of anxiety, and kind of like fall over a tiny bit. I was like, oh shit. And I felt the anxiety. 45 minutes later, I kind of felt like this release of like, whoa. Holy shit, well that fucking sucked. Damn.
I remember my therapist saying to me once, he said, I need you to feel the feelings. Don't hide the feelings. Don't try to cover up the feelings. I need you to feel the feelings. And it sounds like to me right there, you actually felt the feeling.
Oh, yeah. Which is really, really hard to do because it's painful. It hurts. It sucks. I didn't want to sit there feeling my anxiety. I don't want to sit at home feeling my boredom. I don't want to sit down and journal because it brings up feelings and like it's just like I don't necessarily want to do this.
But isn't that's the way out?
It's the only way out. The only way out is through.
Feel the feelings.
The only way out is through. Yep. So when I sat there and I felt the anxiety, and that moment was like, well, I feel better now. I mean, that really sucked, but I felt like $1,000,000. I had worked my way through it, and I have not felt that much anxiety since that point 3 years ago. Every now and again, actually, that's a lie. There was one time when I was going to a party during COVID. It's been a year since I'd been to a party. And
what's COVID?
Right. Yeah, I know. Right.
Yeah. Continue.
Man.
Sorry.
So there was a house party that I was going to. I didn't know anybody there except for one person. I wasn't drinking at the time, and it was way out of the city. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to this party, and I was feeling kind of anxious. And I definitely had some anxiety come up. But here's the other thing. So even though I had a big spike of anxiety at that time, because I had developed such a good relationship to it when I sat with it before, I knew how to deal with it. And I knew that if I just let it be there, that it would eventually work its way out of me. And so I was no longer running my life. Even though I would feel it, I knew that, okay, if I'm there and I just start talking to one or two people, just get the conversational juices flowing, it's just naturally going to fade away. But before, I would have gotten taken in by the anxiety, and I would have let those thoughts run me, and which would have made the anxiety worse. But does this make sense what I'm saying?
It totally is, yeah.
Cool.
I'm just blown away by the strength and to feel the feelings. I'm still kind of not stuck on that, but to really feel the feelings, it takes strength to say, okay, I'm going to go through this. And even the concept of feeling the feelings, I didn't know that until 2016. I was into the whole kind of self-help thing and, it's using this and using that and using this and using that, and it's all that stuff was just to cover up the feelings. And when I actually got down to the feelings, whole life changed doing the work on that. And so what do you say to men, seeing that we're kind of focused on them, is that your journey of kind of feeling, it seems very in depth, you're really in tune, but someone is listening, like, how do you feel? Granted, you can sit at home and you have to feel the feelings. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a fear there of what's going to kind of come out.
Yeah, well, things that I've seen work with gentlemen in the past is, yeah, kind of like what I mentioned before. So like the self-development piece, I definitely want to come back to that too. Yeah. What I've seen work in the past is, again, just sitting at home and feeling, just notice what comes up. And so when it comes to I think that, okay, so there's two thoughts. One is about identifying the feeling that's coming up. And then the other has to do with just feeling in the first place. So if you're having a hard time feeling in the first place, watch a sad movie, watch a happy movie. Are you able to feel happiness? Are you able to feel joy? If yes, then okay, then you're not a robot. You can click the little captcha button, and you're not lying. I'm not a robot.
That's a good start.
Yeah, so if you can feel joy, if you can feel happiness or laughter and actually be genuine with it, well, you're not a robot and you can feel. So now what's happening is like, okay, well, where am I blocking these other emotions? Is there a reason why I'm blocking these emotions? So start a self-inquiry of, okay, when did I stop feeling anger? When did I stop feeling, when did I learn that anger was bad? When did I learn that fear was bad? When did I learn that pride was bad? When did I learn that too much happiness and too much joy was bad? I mean, that's a possibility as well. So it's about doing a self-inquiry around when you may have stopped feeling certain emotions and asking yourself maybe why. And from there, so it's starting down a self-inquiry. And then there's also doing things that could evoke emotion. So like I said, finding something that's alive in you. So maybe watch a movie about war, right? Watch Saving Private Ryan, or the movie Fury, right? About the tank commander, right? Watch that movie. Watch certain things. Watch Schindler's List. Do things that bring up some kind of emotion and start from there as your access point to your emotions. And then as you do that, then also find an hour where you can sit down and literally just do nothing and don't allow yourself to do things that are distractions. That is how we start to feel. Once you're able to start feeling, then you can get to a point when you can identify what those feelings are. But you just need to find a door that's already open.
And how do you get to that place of feeling without having to go down that dreadful road of self-help and spirituality? And is there a balance there? Does it mean I'm going to have to start saying namaste every morning? Am I going to have to do I have to light incense?
Yeah. So the whole personal development thing, right? So personal development is great because it teaches new beliefs, new belief systems, new ways of thinking, new ways of relating to your emotions, new ways of relating to people, the world, business, money, all this stuff. That's self-development because you're developing yourself, right? That is fantastic and it's needed. It's great. It's basically like your own life coach. The most successful people in the world have all had some form of mentor or coach or someone that's at the very least in their corner cheering for them. But yeah, at the very least, but most of the most successful people have some kind of mentorship. So I say do self-development. Where things will kind of go wrong is that people will get so focused on doing that and but they won't necessarily deal with the shit that's still going on. They think that they can think their way out of emotions. They think that they can think their way into a better place, which to some degree, yes, you do need belief systems, but there's also emotions that are happening as well. You're not a robot.
Okay, so I just want to touch on that, and
Sure.
this is something kind of in my area. Okay, you could turn to self-help, and like you said, you can turn to self-help books when it comes to, say, running your business, motivational quotes, and all that other garbage. But when it comes to something like this, I would encourage someone for that person to reach out to someone like yourself who's gone through the process to come out the other end. Because I think some things you find you can kind of do on your own type of thing, but this is something that needs to be handled with care. And maybe you can turn to a book and something like that. And I would think that you'd want someone to say, listen, to reach out to someone to help with this. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, human beings we're meant to be with other people. Like there's studies about like murderers and rapists and serial killers in prison, they don't want to go into isolation. They would much rather spend time with serial killers and rapists and murderers and those violent lunatics in the world. They would much rather spend time with those people than be in a cell by themselves. So I think that just speaks to the power of human connection. So I think that's an important thing to pay attention to. So you like go out and get support, first of all. Second of all, if you want to go out and figure it out all on your own, sure, go for it. But it's going to take you a decade what could have taken you a year. And then that is out of your own pride. The reason why people don't want to ask for help or just want to do it on their own is because they want to figure it out on their own because they like solving problems. And if they're like, oh, well, if I asked for help and I got support, well, then that must mean that I didn't do this on my own because someone told me what to do and I want to be able to figure it out. Well, no, you're coming from a place of ego at that point. And you're coming from a place of pride, not from a place of actually wanting to better the world and create a product or a service that is actually serving people. You're doing this because out of your own ego and out of pride. So, and if you want to do that, sure, go for it. But it's going to take you a lot longer to find success than if you just got coaching or mentorship or guidance from people who've already been there. Intelligent people can solve problems. Wise people learn from the mistakes of others.
It sounds we end up becoming in a very vulnerable place, like as you're sharing as well. So how do you go from a place of being vulnerable to a place of strength?
Yeah. So for vulnerability, when it comes to like, let's say the problem, like going back to the sexual dysfunction and being able to share with my girlfriend at the time, how can I share things vulnerably but with strength? And I think that a lot of people, not just men, but I mean just people in general, they can avoid asking for support. They can avoid a lot of things because they don't want to feel certain things because it's really vulnerable. Because vulnerable means I feel weak, right? And yet you don't need to be vulnerable with everybody. You can discern who you're sharing your vulnerability with, and generally you want to share it with people who are going to be in your corner, right? Now, the way to be vulnerable with strength is by owning it, strictly owning it. So if I share something vulnerable with you and I basically energetically, I kind of like go down on my knees and I'm like, can you help me? Like, this is who I am. Can you tell me how good I am? Can you please tell me that I'm okay? And then it's almost like me like oozing neediness all over you with my vulnerability. Then that's not coming from a place of power. But if I simply own the fact, hey, I'm feeling really fucking weak right now. I'm scared that you're going to judge me. I know that's a stupid thing to have, but I'm scared. I'm sad. This is what I'm dealing with. I don't know the way out. Can you guide me? Can you show me? That right there is more from a place of strength because I'm owning exactly what's going on from a place of my own power. Like, this is who I am. This is what I'm dealing with. This is me, right? That's a place of power. So again, coming back to a place of not having power is if I'm leaking my emotions all over you and I'm not really being honest and I'm just trying to get something from you. Like, I need the validation that I'm okay for feeling this way. that's a weak way of doing it, and that's what's going to repel people when you're being vulnerable.
How does the Ryan today talk to the Ryan of, I guess, from a few years ago? What would you say to that Ryan now?
Oh, good question. What would I say?
You said something really powerful, and I didn't realize how common it is. It's not common because I was surprised you had said it before when I met you 2 years ago, the idea of feeling the feelings.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't even know that I could put those two words together in the same sentence. And I didn't know what it meant to feel. I didn't know what that means. I just thought feelings is just the first part of, feeling sad, feeling happy, and the consistency of constantly using things to constantly feel happy when I had to feel the feelings to deal with the stuff to come out the other side. Now it's consistent. And I always say this, the workout people, the fitness people understand this. It's called your resting heart rate. And that's when you kind of work out, you do HIIT training, you have a resting heart rate where your heart rate stays at 84 beats per minute type of thing. That's the type of thing. And I talk about having a resting attitude and a resting feeling. And I never got to that resting, good, solid feeling of strength until I dealt with my feelings.
Yes.
And so if Rick now would tell that guy 5 years ago, dude, feel the feelings. You're going to go through this. It's not a quick fix. You're not going to get a book that gives you 5 steps, 6 step, 8 step. It's ugly. I think you said it earlier, but you go through the process. So coming back to you, is there something, if you could talk to that Ryan back then,
yeah,
what would that conversation look like?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be 2 years ago. It'd be a lot longer than that. It'd be like a decade ago. But yeah, it would be exactly that. Just feel the feelings. So closing the loop for the personal development, yeah, it's much more about building, but it's not about dealing with the shit that's underneath, like the uncomfortable feelings, right? Not owning what's actually going on. So yeah, I would tell myself, you just gotta be more honest with yourself, man. Just don't hide what's actually going on. It's gonna suck. You're gonna feel weak. You're gonna feel insecure. Own that. And the only way that you can deal with that is by owning it. If I've got this cup, if I've got this glass, and it's got really, really, really hot water in it, and I'm holding on to this thing, and now I'm scalding my fingers, I'm like, oh my God, this really hurts. But I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go and pop a couple pills. I'm gonna get drunk. I'm gonna maybe have sex or something. Well, that's not taking away the fact that this is still scalding my fingers. So I have to at least say, oh, well, I'm holding on to this glass full of scalding hot water. Oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just put it down. Okay, great. It's just that easy. But people don't want to put down those glasses. They don't want to put it down.
Why not?
Because it's part of their identity. They identify with that pain. They don't even realize that they could live a life without that pain. Because they're so caught up in their belief systems. Like, our identity is a system of belief systems and just a way of being, like, with our emotions. So people just are I mean, that's why they're called blind spots. That's why they're called blind spots. It's why it's called shadow work, like identifying the parts of yourself that you've either tried to deny or suppress or hide. That's the shadow. And then blind spots are things that you don't know that you don't know.
What's our shadow?
What's our shadow?
Yeah.
I want to dive into that. I want to make sure that I close the piece with the with the glass.
I like the loop closing. Okay.
Yeah. So with oh no, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. Why don't people want to let go of these things? Right. So you would ask why they don't want to let go.
And went to the shadow part.
Yeah, and then Right. So why they don't want to let it go is because it's part of their identity. First of all, they think that it's a part of their personality, but it's actually not. They're identifying with their pain. They're identifying with being a victim. They're identified with being angry. They're identified with being whatever. Like they identify with these feelings. Or not being good enough or ashamed or whatever. So, and then there's that, and then there's the people who are so blind to these things because they're so distracted and they don't want to face the pain. They don't want to face the fact that they're holding on to something that's harming them. So they're distracted. They distract themselves. They medicate, whether it's with pharmaceuticals or alcohol or drugs or whatever, and they distract themselves. So they don't want, so they avoid the truth. And again, that's the thing, is it's coming back to the truth of what's going on. They don't want to face the truth that they're holding on to this glass.
But isn't there comfort in holding? Like somehow we've become comfort. That's my comfort. I hold on to that pain because I don't know anything else.
Yep, absolutely. So there's a discomfort of letting go because I don't know what's going to exist afterwards, first of all, right? Second of all, how else am I going to get attention and love? If I'm an angry person and I let go of my anger, how am I going to get respected? If I'm feel like a victim or feel hurt or harmed or whatever, then how else am I going to get attention? This is how I get attention, is by being a weaker person. This is how I can get some power over you, by holding on to this, right? So, yeah, does that answer that question?
It does, but we could just keep going with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now the shadow.
Now the shadow. Yeah, so the shadow is the parts of ourselves that we want to deny, or it's the part of ourselves that we want to deny or that we try to disown. So a global perspective of it is people say, I would never become a Nazi. Look at what the Nazis did in World War II. Look at what the Germans did in World War II. I would never become a Nazi. And yet, during this global pandemic, people are doing it right now. The vaccinated are calling the unvaccinated idiots. They're calling them dangerous, making enemies out of them. And then vice versa. Mm. The unvaccinated people who are unaware of their own shit are calling the vaccinated people sheep and whatever. And it's all just a bunch of bullshit. So that's one example, right? The other example is my post where I said, I'm better than you because I'm not fat. So let's say I take a judgment, and this is just one example. So if you're listening in, I want you to make sure that you understand the concept of what I'm saying.
Definitely.
Don't get caught up in the content, but focus on the concept. So I'm better than you because I'm not fat. And here's why. So if I want to deny the fact that I have a judgment about a fat person, someone who's really overweight, let's say I deny the fact that I have these judgments because I'm a really good person. I would never judge them. I want to see who you actually are deep down. And I deny the fact that I have these judgments. Then let's say you are judging someone for being overweight. Pardon me. Burping. If you start judging people, then I'm going to get really, really mad at you for being so judgmental. How dare you? You're a horrible person.
At the same time while judging me.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. That's one part. But what I've just done there is I've taken the judgmental part of myself, right? Where I'm judging you, first of all, right? So that's an example, right? But I'm taking the judgmental part of me that I don't like because I'm a good person. Good people don't judge others based on their weight. That's a bad person. And I see you doing it, so I take the parts of myself that I want to deny and I throw it onto you. So now you're everything bad and I'm everything that's good, at least in this moment. So that's called projection. So I project it onto you. Boom. You're the bad person. I'm the good person. And then it comes with such vitriol. So instead, what we need to be doing, so that's the shadow, the part that I try to deny. I'm not judgmental or disown. Like, I don't have that. I don't have a judgment. I'm not violent. I'm not angry. I don't have the capability of being violent or manipulative. No, not at all. You are. It's disowning it and putting it onto you, and then that's projection. It's one form of projection. So the way that we actually eliminate that, so in this example of judging people for being fat, right? Another reason why I would want to do that, again, is because I want to be perceived as a good person. So if I admit that I have judgments for people who are really overweight, if I admit that, well, now I'm a bad person, and that goes against my identity as being a good person. So instead I have to soften my identity. Like, okay, well, maybe I'm not a completely good person. Maybe I am a bit judgmental. Shit. Okay. Well, let's own these judgments. Do I have judgments about fat people or rich people or poor people or homeless or whatever? Okay, so I'm just going to, am I overly judgy about people who are judgmental? So now I own the judgment. Like, okay, I see that I have judgments. Okay, now I can actually deal with these judgments. That's the only way. Again, it's the only way out is through. So I take these judgments back. I take my power back. I take my emotional power back. Instead of throwing it on you, you're the bad person. It's like, shit. I hold up the mirror to myself. It's like, okay, now I've got the power. Now I'm going to deal with my own judgments. And now as I deal with my own judgments and integrate them to a place of peace, right? Now I can look at someone who's overweight and now I don't feel a huge amount of judgment for them. I might have some subtle judgments, but I'm not coming from a place of you're terrible, you're bad, and I'm good. I don't have those judgments, right? Because I've integrated it. So first of all, I develop compassion for that dark part of myself that I tried to deny before. I develop compassion for that part of myself. Then if I do that, then if you're being judgmental towards someone who's really overweight, I'm not going to get triggered. I'm not going to get furious with you. I'm not going to say, the reasons why you're a bad person. Now I can hold compassion for you and your judgmental part because I've been able to do it to myself. And from there, so I'm just going to finish that. From there, that's when I can properly guide someone away from destructive behaviors because I'm not coming from a place of moral superiority or virtue signaling.
Right. Okay, that last part, because what I would have done in that situation, if you're saying something about a fat person, I think I am sticking up for them by saying something to you. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm doing it. I'm getting offended on their behalf. And I'm trying to defend them by telling you, like you said earlier, you're bad for having that opinion about them.
Sure.
I mean, I'm assuming you've said it out loud to the person, but I mean, maybe you even haven't. But I'm still upset at you for making that comment, even though you haven't said it to anyone. The fact that you feel that way, I am projecting something of mine onto you, and I'm upset at you for thinking that way or feeling that way.
Yeah, so I think the distinction here as well is just it's the emotional response. So we can still have our value systems and say, hey, I mean, judging somebody who's overweight, so let's say you said something horrible to someone who's really overweight. If I was denying my shadow, then I would get really, really, really mad at you and I would respond to you reactively, right? Once I've integrated my shadow, it's like, you know what? I can be a judgmental person as well. And you really shouldn't do that. Like, that's really not, like, you can, like, it's first of all, it's mean, it's hurtful, it's destructive, it's not supporting anybody. And you also don't know what that person's story is.
You don't know the story.
So there's a lot of things that are here. So if I come at you with a lot of reactivity and angry, then that is generally an indication. So that trigger is an indication that I haven't integrated my own shadow of judgment. So that's the first thing. And that doesn't mean that I won't feel sad for the person who's overweight, and that doesn't mean that I'm not going to look at the guy like, dude, you're being a complete dick, right? So I can still fight for my values and what I truly believe to be right, while also integrating my shadow and understanding. Understand, like owning my shadow. It's also another way to build a bridge to other people. Because if you're the bad person, right? You're an anti-vaxxer, I'm a vaxxer. I can't understand how you would do something so stupid and so selfish and blah, 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 blah. And that right there is disowning a part of myself that I don't, like a disowning, maybe it's a rebellious thing, right? So now I'm disowning my own rebelliousness. I'm disowning my distrust for authority. And you're the person who needs to own authority or like trust authority and blah, blah, blah.
Okay, can we open this loop?
Sure.
So with COVID, I know it's torn a lot of kind of families apart, as I understand. Same with the idea of Trump and so on. And I like the angle that you go at, the idea of responsibility, our shadows, and so on. So when it comes to the anti-vax, that has happened. What you just said. How dare you not believe science? And the other one says, how dare you not believe
science?
Exactly.
Both sides have science on their side.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So science and science. So where do you go from that? Is there a takeaway from this conversation that a family sitting there right now, because imagine someone could send this to someone, what conversation can they have to maybe come closer?
Yeah. So the way that you come closer is you own.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
A lot of sides.
Yeah. How can I describe this?
One believes the science and the other one believes the science.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. So let's say, let's role play. So I'm a staunch, vaccinated, trust the science, trust the government person.
Okay.
And you're an anti-vaxxer.
Love it.
But I don't know if I don't know what kind of anti-vaxxer you are or anything like that. So like I just hear that you're not getting vaccinated and now you're an anti-vaxxer in my mind. So what I can do in this moment is, if I get really triggered by that, instead of going into my world of why I'm right and why you're wrong and why I'm a better person than you and why you're a bad person than me, these things start to create distance, more distance, more distance, more distance, more distance. And what I can do instead is, in that moment, it's like, okay, first of all, what can I do to understand your perspective? Just, even if I disagree with it, a lot of people don't want to sit with things that they disagree with. So sit with with your perspective, right? And just do everything that I can to understand you. It's almost like, let's say you're my enemy. Okay, if I'm running a military operation, do I want to, and I hate the Afghanis, the Taliban, I hate them. Okay, well, are you just going to go there and fight them? Or are you going to do everything you can to identify their strengths, their weaknesses, how they think, what their priorities are, what are their values, so you can understand how to attack them best? Right? Does that make sense right there?
It does.
Okay.
It does. However, you're asking something of us, general, to have understanding for the other person, to have a little bit of compassion from whatever angle.
Sure.
You're asking me. You're a vaccinated person. We're role playing here, and I'm anti-vaccine, and I'm, you're not letting me into certain places, and it's my right. And I don't have time to hear about how you feel and what your reasoning is, because I'm following the science type of thing, and I'm right, and you're a sheeple or a sheep, whatever the word that they use, and I'm already getting up in my feelings already, and you're coming from the perspective of kind of war and so on to understand them. And it's true that there are a part of the population that would be like that, say, fuck the Afghanis, fuck them for doing all this type of stuff. But you, having been in the military, you have that experience of having to understand more when you go to war. But in this situation, family sitting at home, they haven't spoken to each other over this whole COVID thing. This is my assumption that I'm making, is what's happening is someone feels they're going to lose by being the first one to say, hey, let's talk. I'm losing by contacting you, Ryan, to say, listen, even to get to the point, say, listen, we're close. We should be talking. Is there any way we can, how am I supposed to reach out to you when I've got so much anger towards you for getting vaccinated and I don't know, whatever conspiracy there is, and you're on the other side of it, kind of saying it back to me.
Yeah.
It's how do we get that understanding to is there a sentence, is there a word that can be said that's
Yeah, that sounds more along the lines of, like, how do I engage with this person? And what I want to bring it back to is, how do I engage with myself? So it's about owning my own shit that's going on, rather than saying, this person is not letting me into restaurants. Instead, taking it back to me. It's like, okay, well, I'm the vaccinated person. I'm doing this for the greater good. And instead, owning the part of myself that could be like this other person. So the unvaccinated person, they're scared of what? So, like, this is a part of the shadow integration, right? So the way that we integrate the shadow is we have to understand what this other perspective is here. So you're unvaccinated. You're unvaccinated because you don't trust the government. You think that it's a money grab. You think that the vaccine is...
There's so many.
There's so many different things, right? or that you just don't trust the mandates?
It was made too quick. That was my first one.
Okay, so there we go. So
Actually, do you mind if I go through a few of them with you?
Do you want to go down that direction?
Well, the reason why, I mean, again, I am fully vaccinated, but I'm just saying some of the things I heard, which I have to go through is, first it was 5G, and then after we got rid of 5G, the next one popped up was it changes your DNA, the mRNA, and then after they kind of got rid of that one, they got tired of that one. The next one was my favorite, the microchips. That was my favorite episode of that, and I really liked that one, liked hearing that. And then it went over to ivermectin. And because Joe Rogan had taken ivermectin, so everyone's like, see, why wouldn't they not just give us ivermectin? Why did they have to kind of give us that? And then finally, the company that makes ivermectin, Merck, pops out and says, actually, no, we haven't done enough trial studies, longitudinal studies to understand the effects of this, which is the exact same reason, which is the first reason why they didn't want to take COVID. So we, as anti-vaxxers, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I'm just going in the role play here, is those are all the things that I'm holding, which I guess I don't want to deal with when kind of talking to you type of thing. So when you want to approach me to talk about, okay, what's the middle ground type of thing?
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. So again, bring the power back to me, right? 'Cause owning my own shadow, right? Owning my own triggers, my own emotions that are coming up. So I hear those, I ask you, so I have to force myself to ask you these questions. I have to own the fact that, okay, I don't fully understand. I hear a high level view, right? And even if I disagree with you, okay, there's no fucking microchips in the fucking vaccine. Okay. But, okay, tell you what is the part of you that would believe that? Okay, so there's the part of you that doesn't trust the government because of X reasons. Okay, you know what? I can understand that. What's the part of me that has some problems and has had problems with authority in the past? Okay. And then I can think about those times where, oh, you know what? I have seen the government fuck things up before. Okay. You know what? If I'm being completely honest with myself, yes, the vaccine makers, and there are numbers of vaccines of people who have had Bell's palsy and myocarditis and these other issues with vaccines. So I can understand why a person might not trust. And there is a part of me, there is a part of me that can find that distrust in authority and big pharma and whatever. So it's in that part. But if I just deny that, no, I'm right and you're wrong, then I'm denying the part of myself that could distrust authority. Does that make sense?
It does.
So in that moment there, that's me taking ownership over my own shadow and not saying that I'm a good person, you're a bad person. Instead, it's me saying, okay, this is my perspective. I'm owning my shadow, and now at this point, I can actually have a conversation with you without being in a place of being triggered and angry, like I'm good, you're bad. That also creates a lot of distance and separation rather than saying, hey, we have two differing perspectives. I can see the human in you because I can see that part in myself that also doesn't trust the government or that has not trusted the government or authority. I have that part of me too, which means that I can see that part in you. And that closes the gap between the two of us, which then means that I'm not going to have hatred for you, right? Or presume that you don't have any respect for people like me. You unvaccinated person, clearly you don't respect everybody else. No. Instead, it's like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. So that's the only real way out, is by owning our shadow.
I think you explained a very realistic way of two people, how they can have a conversation. That's really well said, Ryan.
Oh, thank you.
I like that.
Appreciate it.
Moving forward, with all the work that you have done on yourself, and I apologize, I had said 2 years ago, from 10 years ago, nowadays, what are you currently doing? And I'll make sure that underneath the podcast, all your contact information is there. Sure. I did see you post on Facebook there was a workshop coming up, or you actually had the workshop. Tell me about what you're doing nowadays with men, the type of services that you're offering, and tell me about your podcast you were saying earlier.
Yes. So for the podcast, I'm not doing the podcast anymore. For the workshop, so I was running a co-ed workshop with a friend of mine, but we've decided to hold off on that for now. So the services that I am offering is one-on-one. It's basically shadow integration. So I work with both men and women. I've got a male client and a female client right now. Not a full book, but that is what I do. And basically what I do is I guide people through various processes to remove those triggers, remove those deep emotions that people are struggling with. So let's say you've got a trauma of, like, let's say a car accident, or you know what, there was a client that I had who had lost her partner suddenly, and she was at a point where during this process she was almost throwing up because it was such a triggered moment for her. It was a huge trauma. And in half an hour, she was able to talk about the scenario and talk about the experience like it was 30 years ago. So she had reached a point of integration. She was able to look at it from a place of peace. So that's one example. That's just for traumas. Could be things like fear around performance anxiety. If you're a man, it could be around finding closure from a breakup. Could be fear around starting a business. It could be a number of different things. So maybe, or guilt or shame or discomfort, whatever. If there's a strong upset that's going on in your life and it's blocking you from dating, from money, from business, or whatever, I guide you through certain processes to remove those blocks and get you to a place of peace. Now, when you're at a place of peace, that's a place of internal power. So you can actually, let's say you're having an argument with a partner, you're not coming in from a place of triggered and anger and resentment. Instead, you're coming from a place of empowerment where you can understand the other person's perspective. You still have your own, and now you can make clear decisions of what you're going to do next, not from a place of emotional reactivity, but from a place of personal power. And so that's what I do, is I guide people through these various processes.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for coming on, and we'll obviously have to have you on again because I think there's a lot of talk we can do on the shadows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks a lot.